shiny and sparkly and splendid. Jared referred to him as resilient and as his heartbeat. And the Rose Taylor among them referred to him as an unmatched leader. Lady Vanessa and Eric and Edward and Jared and Taylor, thank you. And yes, we've come to say to the New Birth family that you are not alone. Indeed, prayers all around the world are being offered up unceasingly on your behalf. Over the years, your bishop poured in to you from his spirit. New Birth is a mature, seasoned, and well-prepared congregation. May I therefore humbly admonish you to do everything you can to keep the standard high. Keep the vision fresh. Keep the cross in view. And keep Vanessa and her children as vessels of honor among you. Am I saddened by the fact that on this side of the Jordan, Eddie Long will be no more? Yes, I am. But I find joy in the fact that during his rich and impactful life, he minimized his liabilities. He planned for the unexpected. He enjoyed the ecstasies of life. He endured the pain and disappointment that life brought, and he was ultimately prepared to face the inevitable. His life was impactful. His work impeccable. His ministry influential. And his legacy is assured by the service and contributions of the many persons from so many walks of life who he has so powerfully impacted. I am truly thankful to God that his battle is now fought and his victory won. And while we mourn the death of this great giant of the faith, I invite us to celebrate his life, work, ministry, and legacy. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who thought he was in the form of man, though he was in the form of man, did not regard equality with God something to be grasped. Rather, he emptied himself, taking the form of a slave, coming in human likeness and found human in appearance. He humbled himself, becoming obedient to death, even the death of the cross. Some words from Paul's letter to the church at Philippi, chapter 2. I begin my final words with you then by drawing your attention to a hospital study done on 100 elderly people facing death, indeed close to facing their last breath. They were asked to reflect on their life's greatest regret. And nearly all of them said they regretted not the things they did, but the things they didn't do. The risks they never took. The dreams they never pursued. Ladies and gentlemen, it is not death that most people are afraid of. It is getting to the end of life only to realize that they never really lived. Will your last words be, if only I had? Life is not designed to be bogged down in discussions about how you may have missed the mark. But according to Thomas Manson, it's about the capacity to face trouble with courage disappointment with cheerfulness, and triumph with humility. Life is about resilience and persistence. For the most part, life is not about what happens to you as much as it is what happens in you. And there lies within each of us a powerful potential to impact God's kingdom and change our generation. That's why every person under the sound of my voice has something on him or on herself in their lives designed to help make life better for someone else. The truth is, if you're not making someone else's life better, you are wasting your life. There is a specific assignment that God has placed in the womb of your spirit. And make no mistake about it, whether your life's assignment is this or that, God at the time of your birth equipped you with every necessary tool to be and do what it is you are anointed to be and do. What I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen, is when you were born full of life, full of love, full of potential, full of solutions, full of thoughts, full of dreams, full of creative ability, full. Everything you need to fulfill your life's assignment, to make life better for someone else, and to face the challenges of life because you were born full. It is within you. You have everything you need within you to fix it and solve it. The things that make up your life, the varying circumstances, the nagging issues, the personal duties as well as the personal victories, the things that made you proud, the things that made you cry, the things that humbled you, are all building blocks that are used to shape and mold you for your life's assignment. That's why you were born full. But the whole purpose of life is about being able to live your life in such a way that you die empty. I hold to the view that it was never God's intention for any of us to die the way we were born, full. The challenges of life, the issues of life, the moving from one stage of life to the next, through all the changing scenes of life. It's all designed to get you at each stage of your life to empty yourself. One of the richest and most valuable piece of property in any city is usually the cemetery. And that's because there are so many people lying in their grave who died without emptying themselves. They died as they were born, full. They went to their graves full of dreams, full of visions for the future, full of love, full of potential, full of solutions, full of thoughts, full of creative ability. They died with books inside of them, unwritten songs. They died with people in their hearts that they should have forgiven, while others died with love on the inside of them that should have been spread abroad. Because love is something that you give away. If we examine the life of Jesus, you hardly ever see Jesus on the receiving end. For the most part, you see Jesus giving. Whenever and wherever he saw the blind, he gave sight. Wherever and whenever he saw the lame, he gave them the ability to walk. Wherever and whenever he saw the deaf, he unclogged their ears, gave them hearing. Wherever and whenever he saw hungry people, he fed them. And wherever and whenever he saw the sick, he healed them. What Jesus was doing was emptying himself. He knew that he was not on this earth to stay, and he knew that his time on earth was winding down, and he knew he had a responsibility to pour out everything that God had placed inside of him. That's why he spent his life healing the brokenhearted and setting the captives free and giving liberty to the oppressed and preaching the gospel to the poor. He spent his life emptying himself. And so we see Jesus doing that as he made his way to the cross, because he knew that every day of his life was taking him closer and closer to the cross. Time and history on the unwinding paths of the human progressive march will all cause us one day to find ourselves at the foot of the cross. When Jesus got to that cross, he kept on giving, because he paid a debt he did not owe. All because we owed a debt we could not pay. He got to that cross and he kept on giving. He gave his hands to the nails. He gave his head to the thorns. He gave his side to the sword. He was using these final moments to empty himself. And while he was on that cross, he kept on giving. He gave forgiveness to his perpetrators. He gave paradise to a repentant thief. He gave a son to his mother. And when he felt he had emptied himself, we hear him on the cross saying, "It is finished. It is finished. I've worked the work of him who sent me. It is finished. I've paid the price and I've obtained the prize. Tetelestai. It is finished. It is completed. The work is done." And once Jesus said it was finished, he was ready to die, but he remembered that he had one more thing left before he could go back to the celestial city. And so we hear him saying, "Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. I've given everything I had to humanity, but I have one more thing left. I want to give you back my spirit." And when he put his spirit in the hands of his Father, he hung his head and he gave up the ghost. Jesus died empty. That brings me to my final 5 minutes. Bishop Long's life was a life lived for others. You could always see him involved in civic, community, church, national, global affairs. Many times we would be together and he said, "Well, pray for me. Vanessa's gonna kill me." And he would go ahead and give his schedule of what he was doing. And I would say something like, "I don't blame her." Eddie Long was one of the most generous persons I have ever met in my life. He was at his best when he was giving. Benevolence was his oil of joy. Help me, Jesus. For those who were privileged to have him as a friend, we can quickly attest to the fact that for him, friendship was not really built upon the desire to have a friend. It was built upon the commitment to be a friend. His was a life lived for others, and all he was really doing was emptying himself. Every time he paid the down payment for somebody to get a house, he was emptying himself. Every time Eddie Long paid off the mortgage for a friend, a relative, or a new birth member, and there were many, he was emptying himself. Every time he paid the college tuitions for young people who could not afford to pay for college, he was emptying himself. When he was handing out car keys to members who needed transportation, and there were many, I saw them. He was emptying himself. This is the Eddie Long I know. When he was giving out groceries and household appliances and furnishing houses for members who had fallen on tough times, he was emptying himself. And every time he preached a sermon and taught Bible study, he was pouring into God's people, and at the same time, he was emptying himself. Every time he released one of his 14 books, he was not only investing in the lives of thousands around the world, he was emptying himself. When he would meet with pastors of the Father's house and pour into his spiritual sons and daughters, he was emptying himself. Every time he jumped onto a plane to do services in South Africa and New Zealand and Kenya and South and Central America and England and Japan, he was emptying himself. Bishop Long preached his final message during the watch night services on December 31st. He called me the day before. Roberto, and said, Ellis, what we preaching tomorrow night? Take that, Roberto. And though he was a little weak that night, he poured into the new birth family. And he did it with the promise of continuing the message the following morning. He didn't make it back on Sunday. His son Edward stood up for him. Because according to Bishop, I gave them everything I had left last night. During the last 2 weeks of his life, he spent pouring into his wife and his children and grandchildren and other family members who were caregivers and sons, caregivers during this final stage of the journey. Say what you wish. Eddie L. Long died empty. He is taking nothing to the grave outside of that which will go back to the dust. He became obedient to death, even dying empty. Now that he's come to the end of his journey, and he's gone on to take his well-deserved rest, please, people, let him alone now. Please, people, all across this world, please let my friend rest in peace. If I could have one final conversation with him, I believe he'll tell me it's all right now, Ellis. No more pain, no more surgery, no more suffering. I'm in my Savior's care now. So come on, Eddie, I know you're listening. Let's have this final public conversation here in New Birth. What shall I tell all these people gathered here today? Tell them, Ellis, thank you for coming and giving me a grand send-off, and encourage them to trust in the Lord with all their heart and lean not on their own understanding. Okay, Eddie, what could I say to your beloved wife? Tell her we've had a great life together, and God favored me by allowing me to be her husband. Tell her I've enjoyed being your husband and the father of your children. And remind her, Ellis, that now I cannot come to her. She must come to me. So what shall I say to Edward and Eric and Jared and Taylor? Tell them I'm godly proud of each of them. They were all special to me in their own way. Tell them draw down on all that I've poured into them these years. Tell them follow Vanessa's lead and make their mother and me proud. And hey, Ellis, I need you to tell my grandchildren, don't cry for Big Daddy. Explain to them that this is not the end. It's only an intermission. I've gone to receive what I've been working for all these years. I hear you, Eddie. Just before we sign off, you've passed a new birth for just under 30 years. Do you have any final words for these people that you love so dearly and serve so faithfully? You know I do, Ellis. Tell your members. You know I will, Eddie. By the way, let me thank you for being a good assistant pastor here in my absence. But tell the New Birth family, thank you. Thank you. Seemed to me like for how you've poured into them and blessed them, they should be telling you thank you. I know, Ellis, but watch this. Tell them, thank you for loving me and standing with me and believing in me when the world turned against me. Tell them, thank you. Tell them I'll always be with them in spirit, expecting them now to put in practice all that I've taught them and poured into them. And tell them, give the next leader their full support as if they were supporting me directly. Tell them, they know how we do it. We live and love and lead like Jesus. All right, Eddie. I'll tell them, yeah, because that's enough, Ellis. Let's end this conversation. I fought my fight. I finished my course. And even with feet of clay, I've kept the faith. Now it's time for me to celebrate. I've given the best of my service. I've been telling the world these years that the Savior has come, and I've not been dismayed when men didn't believe me, because I always knew He'll understand and he'll say, well done. So tell them all here gathered, if when you try and fail in your trying, hand, sword, and scarred for the work you've begun, take up your cross, run quickly to meet him. He'll understand and say, well done. Oh, when I come to the end of my journey, weary of life, for the battle is won, carrying the staff and the cross of redemption, he'll understand. He'll say, well done. Farewell, my covenant brother. I'll meet you in the morning.
Bless you, Bishop Ellis. Please, congregation, take your seats as we received instructions from Elder Long and the Long family. And as we had our discussions, it's like, what would Bishop Long desire?